'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
The devil works hard, but Zutara fans work harder. They are built different. If reality kicked them in the teeth, they'd ask for seconds and still deny it. The war ended, but they never left the trenches. Katara kissed another man, didn't matter. She had his kids, child's play. Zutarans didn't hear no bell, and now the other man was dead. And even if the party was now a lemon party, the party don't stop till this ship sets sail. The Zutara fandom suffers from a level of delusion that you just have to respect. As at this point, they've manifested it so much that Netflix, it has a better chance of being better than the original than them not milking the shit out of this Zutara phenomena. Zuko x Katara is one of those things that just keeps people up at night. A call of what coulda, shoulda been, and one of the most memed things in the fandom. As, well, it was always kind of obvious that this was never going to happen. We had a few brief glittering, okay, maybe one moment, and then that didn't happen, and they've never let it go. However, for all the hype, all the controversy, was Zutara really worth it? As yeah, something being popular doesn't mean that it's good. I should know. It's just a nice coincidence when it is. But my questions still stand. Was Zutara really worth the hype, or was it just a case of the right tropes for the right demographic? Was Zutara really just all potential and no execution? That people saw it for what they wanted, not what it actually was? And does that even matter? Or is this just a more basic story about pretty privilege and how the most traditionally attractive main characters would of course be shipped together? There is a lot to unpack with this ship, the good, the bad, and just trying to figure out how a fan pairing got so popular that even now the show is referencing it. Well, I'm Sarcastic Course, this is somehow my job, so let's break down Zutara and decide once and for all who Katara's endgame should have been.
It should have been me, not him!
So I guess I gotta start this video by just putting all my biases on the table. I'm not the biggest Zutara shipper in the world. I thought it was hot as a kid because I'm not blind. But The Last Airbender though had me brainwashed into craving the release from the long waiting game that was Katara x Aang. I won't lie, there are moments in the show that just had me hooked on the idea of Zutara. Those special kinds of scenes where logic and context just leave your brain as just the idea of the show. Maybe actually going through with it just trumps everything.
The Fire Nation took my mother away from me.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone?
This one moment, the whole world sat on a knife's edge and no one knew where it was gonna fall. And I do think this one scene is kind of just the peak and just the main glue that holds this ship mostly together. As more than just a ship getting out to sea, the question of what Zuko would choose to be, good or evil, just the possibility they would create for this ship just captivated me. As for this moment, anything seemed possible. I never felt this ship in my bones, but I always thought it had the potential to be interesting. Something that was made all the easier by Katang being the slow burn tease that it was. I can see why people would crave something with a little bit more spice. For this ship though, I was never in the trenches, but I also would be happy if you guys won, as the complications to make it happen would be worth watching, as that would just be a game changer for the dynamics of the team, as it would be less reshuffling the deck and flipping the table and making it everyone else's problem, which is just a level of mess that fits me to a T. But for as much as I like the idea, I saw the writing on the wall, so I knew not to get my hopes up. I talked my shit and rolled my eyes when people said, oh yeah, it had to happen. But if there was ever a ship that I could respect the drive for, it was Zutara. This is where I'm coming from. Now let's talk about this ship and how it actually kinda starts. And it starts the way most fan favorites do, with war crimes. Now just a little bit of context for who the people in this ship actually are. Katara is the last waterbender of the South Pole. Her people, the Water Tribe, have suffered systematic and horrific violence at the hands of the Fire Nation. Lacking the military might of the Northern Water Tribe, nor the sheer size of the Earth Kingdom, the Southern Water Tribe was pretty much easy pickings for the worst of the Fire Nation's atrocities. It can't be understated just how badly the Fire Nation messed them up, and doing so for pretty much no solid tactical reason. The Southern Water Tribe seems to have always been one of the smaller nations. They are far away from most of the main conflict and have little known natural resources at this point. They discover oil later in the comics. It's a whole thing. In spite of that, the Fire Nation pretty much made crippling the Southern Water Tribe their favorite hobby, raiding the small isolated villages on a semi-regular basis, kidnapping or killing all the benders they could get their hands on, with this process being so thorough that the current generation of the Water Tribe has never seen a waterbender, making Katara's situation an oddity rather than the norm. The Fire Nation may not have wiped them out like they did with the air nomads, but they pretty much decimated the culture and customs of the South Pole. They were bombed into basically subsistence levels, with it taking decades to bounce back from this, and only doing so with the help of the Northern Water Tribe and oil. They discover fucking oil, and that's why they have money in Korra. This is the environment that Katara was raised in. Her mom was killed by the Fire Nation, her dad left to fight in the war with all the other men, leaving her alone with the women and the children to hold down the fort despite the death of her mom still being very fresh. Katara has been put through the ringer, with her gifts of waterbending not really bringing her much comfort since she's untrained and getting dismissed by her snarky ass brother. There's being dealt a bad hand, and then there's having the few good cards you have being ripped away from you, with things only looking like they'll get worse, as Katara was just trapped mothering Sokka till the plot steps in and decides, yeah, this is depressing enough to finally start the story. Katara finds Aang, the Avatar, world's last hope, trapped in a popsicle, but her getting Aang also ends up playing into Katara's own lived experience of having the Fire Nation try and take things from her, as now they're trying to kill/kidnap Aang. So the plot of the show is pretty much built around a very painful core memory for her, and the person taking the place of her mom's killer is Zuko. Now, Zuko can be best described as... Hold on, I have something for this.
Sorry, I can't talk right now. Thinking about my past.
Zuko is the edgiest boy. Spirits bless his arc about becoming a better person, but the dark, troubled, bad boy angle is just so strong and so undeniable here. Characters have fans, but then they have whatever the fuck Zuko has. I didn't think it was possible to stalk a cartoon character, but I'm sure someone found a way with Zuko. Though I can kinda get why. Zuko from Jump is immediately the most interesting character in the room. He seems set up at first just to be the standard antagonist for the series, but even as early as episode 3, we were getting hints that yeah, he's gonna be more than just a villain. His goal at the start of the series is pretty simple: get Avatar, get honor, then maybe daddy will love me. Zuko is the most active threat in the first season, constantly trying to capture Aang for his own ends, but for as much as people hype up Zutara and how all-consuming it was for the fandom, the actual moments that started the fire that refused to go out took a while to actually happen. Yet, the actual urge to pair them together romantically started way earlier than you'd think, primarily because Zuko can get it, and he's got a tragic backstory.
But in his eyes, you are a failure and a disgrace to the Fire Nation.
That's not true.
You have the scar to prove it.
That was a particularly harrowing memory.
Now, something I always like to see in stories is just the difference between what the characters know versus what we, the audience, know. Team Avatar isn't watching this show with us. They don't know dick about what Zuko is doing in his free time. As far as they know, he's basically just sitting alone in a room contemplating new ways of being a hater, which kinda true, but really, Zuko is a way more nuanced character than that. As after his big raid the village, threaten the old, and kidnap Aang Tiff in the pilot, our very next scene with Zuko, the supposed main villain of the story, is him getting bullied by a grown-ass man.
You're just a banished prince. No home, no allies. Your own father doesn't even want you.
Episode 3 is where we get the hints of what Zuko's arc is gonna actually be, as Zuko and his warship go from this massive imposing presence to a tiny fish in a much bigger pond. He has pretty much the biggest little ship in the fleet, with Zuko's status as an exile being made very clear, as pretty much nobody respects him. They won't shoot him on sight, but despite being the crown prince, he's pretty much just tolerated by the people his uncle is most likely paying, and getting actively mocked by others like Zhao, who calls Zuko an unloved embarrassment to his face, or what's left of it, a fact he cruelly alludes to. And something that I also kind of miss about this early season that I've noticed but isn't really replicated later on, I forget how short Zuko is. Like, look at this man compared to his soldiers. He's not big. Like, he's bigger than the kids, but he's clearly smaller than the adults. But I feel like as the series goes on, you kind of stop comparing him against actual grown-ass people. So you kind of let yourself forget, like, okay, no, Zuko really is this young. And I do think I kind of miss that, and it really just helped just crystallize just how young and immature Zuko actually is. Like when he's compared against Zhao, you can see, okay, he is young and he is being disrespected at every single turn. We constantly hear Zuko talk about getting his honor back, about getting his father's approval by capturing the Avatar, but in just episode 3, we see just how screwed he actually is. Zuko isn't just some villain, Zuko is the underdog of his own story. He's trying to beat the entire Fire Nation to be the one to capture Aang, with this episode going even further to allude just how broken his home life actually was. As Iroh is a treat, he's a snack, but while they don't say that his dad Ozai was the one who burnt his face, just the fact that Zhao is allowed to talk to Zuko so disrespectfully, or how Zhao, for what a massive dick he's being, was in fact dead on the money when he said that if his dad wanted him back, he would have recalled him after 2 years of a pointless search. Especially since this quest was believed to be a wild goose chase, as the Avatar hadn't been seen in 100 years. While we don't see the full depth of how bad Zuko has got it, the implications are all there, and we see that Zuko probably isn't chasing the approval of something that is worthy of him. This backstory recolors a lot of Zuko's interactions in the pilot, where yes, he did in fact invade Katara's village, a village full of women and children, which is a bad thing. But for as bad as this could have been, we actually see him be semi-restrained when it comes to intimidating the women and children. He knocked Sokka on his ass, does it again, while systematically breaking his spear and poking him into the ground. Zuko could have made Sokka his twin right here, but instead he just disarmed him and proved how outmatched Sokka actually was. Zuko is showing that yes, I am not to be fucked with, but I'm also not trying to maim or torture anybody. It's not great, and he snaps after losing his temper after getting hit in the head by a boomerang, but for all the manhandling grandma, he's not threatening to kill her. Zuko, for all of his baggage, could have done a lot worse, with us the audience seeing the reasons for why he's like this, and how it is an uncle-shaped miracle that he's not worse. Yet, Team Avatar doesn't know any of this, which creates that knowledge gap between us and the characters. We as the audience get to know Zuko's tragic past. We find all about how his father maimed him for speaking out against throwing away young recruits. We see his internal conflict between what he wants and the loyalty he feels to his family, aka his uncle, and sometimes even his crew. But all Katara is really getting from him is,
I need to capture the Avatar!
Now this is quite the dissonance, and it's not a bad thing. The tragedy that is Zuko's life pretty much sets us up to expect some kind of twist or change in Zuko later down the road. The difference between his more noble nature versus the other members of the Fire Nation, or just his struggles between doing what's right and doing what he wants. All this builds to create a character the fans will obsess over, as we are all just waiting with bated breath to see what he'll choose to do. So while Katara doesn't know his backstory, on a certain level we're desperately waiting for Team Avatar to find out. To have Zuko tell them, so they can finally see Zuko for who he truly is and not just his worst moments. Because honestly, yeah, they can fix him. And by them, I mean Katara. You're wondering why? Let's talk.
I will never ever turn my back on people who need me.
Katara is the heart of the team, which to me has always been the most brutal role to be trapped in writing-wise. As yeah, heroes get the whole story to be basically about him. The comedic relief can fuck around only for their sad moments to hit way harder than they have any right to be. Bruisers like Toph just need to be fun and badass, but the heart is pretty much the least glamorous yet hyper-criticized position on the team. Essentially, Katara is meant to be the voice of hope and morality. When others want to burn down the world, she's the one trying to convince them, hey, maybe there's a better way. If somebody is at their lows, it's her job to pick them back up. This isn't just Katara being preachy, she's the person the story has designated as being the most grounded and nurturing of the group, being the most moral, being the one who is willing to talk and get people to talk about the things that are clearly eating them up inside. It's not glamorous, but it's a vital necessity to the story, but the one people tend to hold to a very difficult double standard. Because being the caregiver is a huge responsibility. Always being the one to say, let's not fight, is exhausting. It can get annoying and cause us to think the character is as well. And while she has most things on lock, the small difficulties of being in this role has Katara wanting to just go apeshit. With a few times that she does do something outside of her usual Paragon alignment, it feels just a lot more egregious, with audiences reacting to it a bit more aggressively than if, and I'm serious, anyone else in the story decided to do it. People are still bitching about Katara stealing the scroll and lashing out at Aang when her insecurities of him being better than her makes her say some stupid shit, which she immediately apologizes for. And in contrast, Zuko nearly burnt Kyoshi Island to the ground and nobody says dick. Jet nearly drowns a village full of civilians seasons, and he's still coasting off his bad boy cred to this day. Meanwhile, Katara is mean for 10 seconds, and people to this day still hold it against her. And like, I'll never forget this one tweet I once saw, couldn't find it, but it was basically some complaint about how the modern internet invented this hatedom against Katara, when no. Sorry, you poor sweet Summer's child. No, fuck no. People have been giving her the short end of the stick since season 1 first aired. I know this, as I was actually alive to witness it. It's sad, but it's true. Being the heart of the friend group is the worst fucking job on the team. There's no breaks, you're held to a weird double standard. Trying to be the person who is sincere and pushing for actually, well, helping people can come off as preachy to an audience already over poisoned with cynicism. So Katara's actions always end up great on a different standard than pretty much everyone else's. She's traditionally feminine, unlike Toph, who just leans into badass snark. All this results in Katara catching strays from pretty much every direction. The role she has on the team is underappreciated. She gets grilled the worst for making selfish decisions, with nobody being around to give her the same comfort as she's the one who's usually doing that job. So, in conclusion, her job sucks, there's no breaks, and the perks are basically non-existent. Except for one.
Every time he does the sad stuff, you get all, you know.
It's just I feel like I can fix him.
Yeah, if you're the heart, you're getting shit with the bad boy, as the fans want someone to fix this poor lost soul and help bring them back to light, and yet they're also too cowardly to ship themselves or make an OC. So naturally, the only real option people had in the first season was Katara. We haven't even gotten past episode 4 yet, but based on just the aesthetics and archetypes of their character, you can see why Zutara was immediately the most shippable couple in the show. People love Zuko, they want him. Katara is the caretaker of the group, so if you're looking for somebody to fix him, she's who you're gonna go with, as you really can't discount the power of a self-insert ship, as that is just so many ships in fiction. Like, we can pretend to love the chemistry of certain characters together, yes, yet to be honest, sometimes you just want them for yourself, so you'll use the character that's most like you and just keep working from there. But even then, with the easy excuse of wanting Zuko on the team, for wanting someone to see him as more than just a villain, fusing the fan desire of wanting him to be better with the bad boy appeal, even then, Zutara is still pretty much an all-you-can-eat shipping buffet. And most of it is just opposites attract. The writers pretty much gift wrapped the fire and water thing, the mood boards basically make themselves. A rich prince raised in luxury and abuse. Then you have Katara, who grew up with nothing except a loving family that his country ripped away from her. You have bad boy, good girl, she can fix him, he can make her worse. You have the angle of Zuko realizing that his country was wrong, and having him learn that through the lens of Katara. There's so many easy ways you can rewrite their projected arc and recenter it to just be all about them. If you want Zuko to be a better man, the problem solver is right here. You want Katara to have some edge, just put her in the same room as Zuko. If you want her to be an asshole, well, yeah, it's him. Let's be honest, Zuko was a bratty jackass in the first season. There are times where you want to ship because of complementary reasons, but other times, you just love it how different they are, as that difference creates contrast that can create chaotic and exciting new possibilities to explore. It would be messy, but it would also be fun. This contrast is, to me, the core reason that Zutara had such a chokehold on its fandom, as they are the most traditionally good-looking characters in this series, or at least Zuko will be once he loses the bald look. Their aesthetic and backgrounds are exact opposites, so it creates tons of fun ways to rewrite and explore the idea of them possibly being together. More so than Katang, which isn't objectively bad even with the writing. It doesn't have the same kick or spice that will really hook fans the same way that Zutara does. It doesn't get fans to really think about how this ship will work. Katang falls in love. Cool, that's kind of it. Zutara, meanwhile, it's a more active process where you're creating and theorizing how a couple will end up together and how that would actually work. And like, for example, if Zuko were to marry Katara, it then creates a situation like, okay, how is the Fire Nation gonna react to having a water-bending queen? There's a difference of cultures, there's different of beliefs and philosophies, and there's so much extra baggage that could go along with these two being together. Meanwhile with Aang, it's kind of just like, he's the last of his kind, they will roll with anything, there's no extra societal baggage that would really like, okay, how else can we add to this or like complicate things? No, the real issue is like, he's the Avatar, and he's gonna be busy. Zutara, while not canon, feels like it has way more intrigue and stuff to chew on than its counterpart. And I feel like that goes to a long way to explain why the fandom loves them so much, as there is this phenomenon that happens in fandoms where certain characters or pairings will get like the most fan attention. They're not the actual couple with the most amount of fans. Just use a video game example in my personal favorite dating sim, Baldur's Gate. The online fandom for this show would deep-throat a cactus if Asterion would call them a good boy. In spite of having the most fanfiction, probably the most fan art, he isn't anywhere close to being the top 3 most picked love interest. That would be Shadowheart.
Hells. You didn't pick that by hand, did you? They're deadly poisonous. Joking. They're safe.
I love her too, but you can't convince me she is the most eye-catching or has the best written love story. No, the real answer is just a lot more basic. Baldur's Gate's player base tends to skew more male. She's the most conventionally attractive woman in your party. She is the first one you meet, so people, just through pure numbers, will follow inertia instead of picking Karlach like any true fan of culture. Astarion is a character fans most like to talk about, but he's not the most popular or has the most fans. This though illustrates that there is a difference between fandoms and the actual total audience. Most people who watch Avatar will probably be fine with who Katara ended up with. They won't question the fact that the final shot of the series, after all this talk about community coming together, all of us uniting as one, it ends with the couple kissing, because this is their moment. Fuck everyone else. But if you're in this fan space talking about the show, then what grabs you will tend to be something just a bit more meatier with more room to discuss and, let's be honest, fight about. Hence why Zutara being as popular as it is never surprised me. It just triggers that dramatic fanfic part of our brains in a way that pretty much no other ship in the show traditionally can. It's basically a freebie for you the viewer to theorize and write your own versions of this love story, even if that's not actually what's happening on screen. So that's been a lot of talk about fandom phenomena and just the angles people typically run with this ship. But outside of optics, what is this show actually giving us to indicate that this ship is possible? Or what are people really buying into as it first started? Well, I think the answer to that is, well, it's kind of giving unintentional horny.
I'll save you from the pirates.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Say what you will about Sokka and Suki and the nastiness they're getting up to behind the scene. Early Zutara is basically the one ship in the season who is basically ripped right out of a YA novel. We have the dark, brooding villain, the young heroine who's fighting against the Empire. It's, and I say this with all love, very smutty. Like, it's only semi-intentional, but from Zuko finding Katara's necklace after she loses it, capturing her when she's trying to run away from the pirates she stole from, saying, "I'll protect you," when he is clearly worse, then the interrogation scene, where we get fucking Zuko going on a charm offensive, playing at being sympathetic, like, hey, I have my reasons, and I have a reason for you to help me, boom, necklace. The actual context of what's happening is bad. He's holding this girl hostage, yet it triggers that smut part of your brain where you don't say stop, you lean into it. I know this show is, else they wouldn't have Zuko whispering this entire sequence. Also, for those of you who are just grabbing the horny stick, yes, this is a rough situation for Katara. She's being held against her will. It's the whole shebang. The fact, though, that Avatar has been made with kids in mind, that lets the audience feel safe and experience what would otherwise be a very tense and difficult situation. We know that shit can't go into PG-13, allowing people to turn the potential danger into excitement and trigger the worst case of,
It should have been me, not him!
like, this is still one of the worst cases of this I've seen in a fandom in a while. They have not been topped. Though Nanami was very close. Zuko Sims were ready for something like this. They got it. It was a whole awakening, but it also speaks to the tension that surrounds so much of Zuko and Katara's actual relationship in the show. Zuko and Aang, yeah, they have an interesting dynamic, but it's built around obsession and avoidance. Zuko wants to capture the Avatar, but Aang never gets a chance to really build any intense hatred or fear of Zuko. He's kind of just avoiding the guy. He's a problem, but he's not that much of a problem. Aang once wonders, hey, could we have been friends in a different set of circumstances? Zuko attacks him. Then Aang just goes back to avoiding the guy the next day. There's something kind of interesting here, but it's one-sided in a way that doesn't really lend itself to a conversation or conflict. Aang's just existence highlights everything wrong with Zuko's life. Aang doesn't get a big emotional link to really tie him down to Zuko. They have lots of parallels, but their relationship isn't like locked in. It's not the thing that really attracts you. You love to see them interact. It is more just the symbolism and just how they parallel each other. They're complementary, but it's missing that big emotional conflict that really makes their scenes together pop. Instead, Katara is the one who gets that honor. Katara is the caregiver of the group. She wants to protect Aang, and has a history of losing people to the Fire Nation. Nation. She's the Avatar's #1 defender, while Zuko is his biggest hater. As the idea is that this is more about the Avatar than it is about their actual beef between each other. This creates this weird space where it feels like they could actually learn and grow to like kind of just, well, talk to each other, learn about each other, and kind of find room to grow beyond that. As the problem isn't actually in the room, so Zuko can't just throw fire at it, so maybe, just maybe, he can actually learn and explain himself. And we see just a little bit of that when Zuko kidnaps her. As in his attempt to manipulate her, Zuko volunteers info about his tragic backstory. Now this is a quest of honor for him. Katara's refusal to give in and the intrigue around the necklace, it holds both of their attention as a question of how is she gonna get it back. It enters the chat. With Zuko and Aang, the fight is on sight. But with Zuko and Katara, you're able to have moments where the hero and villain side of the story can come together, not try and kill each other, even if just for a little while. Sokka's too goofy, Toph doesn't exist yet, so Katara is put in this place of hating Zuko more than pretty much anyone else on the team. It could also be the bridge where we see some of his non-edgelord behavior slip through. Even if again, yes, he is 100% being a villain here. This is why when Zutara's never forget moment happens later, it is between Zuko and Katara, as the divide between them feels so strong that it does feel more meaningful if it starts here versus elsewhere. Zuko, yeah, it would be easier for him to like befriend Aang than it is Katara, but because of his issues, he can't really start there. So if it had to begin somewhere at this point, it would be Katara, and that would be his stepping stone to joining the good guys. So in conclusion, Aang's the villain who isn't as bad as he seems, heroine who can kick his ass and fix it. Plus the fact that Katara actually hates Zuko equals a relationship that always has tension but always feels like it could be the start of something else. Hence why people have always had a stronger attachment to Zutara versus some of the other canonical examples we've seen, as people value excitement over common sense.
What happened? Your girlfriend run off on you?
Also, the whole finding a girl's memento thing is a trope as old as time. Zuko has her necklace, which will later turn out to be an engagement necklace. Like, this is the fanfic equivalent of a layup. Not to mention June is calling Katara Zuko's girlfriend. All the easy things to spark shipping are all right here. One of the easiest of easy things, after giving them the red and blue fire and water contrasting motif, you have them find the finale of season 1. Katara proving just how good she's gotten after training in the North Pole. She wins till the sun rises, and we get this gem of a line.
You rise with the moon. I rise with the sun. I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about!
Every easy motif is given to these two. But then we get peak when round 2 happens and Katara one-shots Zuko. The whole debate of should we leave him to die or bring him with us is kind of not a thing to her as she stays quiet through all of it. But the fact that she stays quiet does imply she doesn't really care one way or the other. There is this idea of Zuko and Katara being in constant competition throughout the first season. Both of their characters center around Aang, but the moments we see of them together feed into the idea of some kind of bond could be formed between them, creating a personal conflict and relationship that could potentially help the both of them. From Katara recognizing the humanity of the Fire Nation, even its supposed upper echelons, to Zuko realizing that the Fire Nation is wrong, that he is its victim, and embracing the nobility that has always been inside of him. Even though right now, it's all being trained on the Avatar in a misguided quest for redemption that he doesn't actually need. Plus, helping all of this is the fact that, of course, Katara famously has a thing for bad boys, so of course this works. Okay, this is gonna be a whole entire tangent. People have been memeing the hell out of Katara having a thing for bad boys since Jet. It has been used as the basis for so much of her supposed attraction to Zuko. The show's extras even refer to it as a thing, but she's not. Katara doesn't have a thing for bad boys. We just have gaslit ourselves into thinking that that's what happened. Like, honestly, it's never been a thing. Like, yes, Jet was a bad boy who was willing to flood a town full of civilians to kill some fire people. But when Katara was crushing, she didn't know that. The second she finds out, she nails him to a tree for it. No, what made Katara swoon was the confidence, the cool factor. The fact that he seemed to have it all together. He was leading his own little rebellion. The kid was the king of his friend group. He came out of the woods looking like a folk hero, and compared to her dorky brother and the goofy friend she's been traveling with, Jet was a whole new experience. Especially when he's rocking Katara's actual weakness, dead parents.
Fire Nation killed my parents. I was only 8 years old. That day changed me forever.
The only way I can feel close to my father now is when I practice my bending. He taught me everything I know.
I really am the last airbender.
Katara has never been an orphan she wouldn't bare her soul to. She's already the most empathetic member of the team, but if the Fire Nation has put a family member of yours in the ground or behind bars, Katara will drop everything just to ask if you're doing okay. She lost her mom to the Fire Nation, so she knows what it's like. It's the source of her pain, and it is the origin story for everything that she is right now. So she's always willing to show empathy to people who have lost parents to the Fire Nation. even when it's her greatest enemy.
The Fire Nation took my mother away from me.
That's something we have in common.
Now, before we get to Zutara's 9/11, hashtag never forget, we do need to talk about the journey that brought them to this point, and by them, I do mean Zuko. So after getting his ass beat, Zuko snuck off to fight Zhao, who was fresh off his I can't win so fuck the world tantrum. He killed the moon spirit, then ran away, only for Zuko to catch him. They fight, and in spite of the fact that Zhao tried to kill him earlier, Zuko tried to save the other man's life when the ocean spirit caught him. Then after nothing went his way, with no avatar, no ship, and no money, Zuko finally allows himself to take a nap after an entire season of refusing to sit down. Cue season 2, where the real father-son R&R session gets interrupted by Azula, Zuko's sister. Look, I know most of you know that, but for those that don't, Azula is Zuko's sister. There, now you know. Azula spins a lie about how Ozai wants Zuko back in his life, which the attention-scarred puppy just immediately falls for, only for it to all be a trap. Shocker, I know. But now Zuko and his uncle are both fugitives, not exiles from the Fire Nation, with Zuko and Iroh deciding that they'd rather risk certain death hiding in the Earth Kingdom than risk capture by Azula. Which fair. So it's here where Zuko is so disconnected from his obsession with finding the Avatar that Zuko is finally left to face his true worst enemy, pondering his life choices. But to avoid that, he starts stealing to fund his current lifestyle, and then immediately ditches his uncle the second they have a disagreement. Zuko is having a rough one. He is doing everything and anything not to make his life better. But in spite of all that, he is forced to accept the help of Earth Kingdom citizens, to see the first-hand destruction his people have caused and the scars it's left on its victims. Meeting a woman named Song who fed him out of the goodness of her heart, only for him to turn around and rob her. Zuko is on the long, slow journey of being forced to recognize the humanity of his supposed enemies and grapple with the idea that the Fire Nation is, well...
Are we the baddies?
Zuko, on his own, meets a kid who reminds him of himself, risking his life to save him from some thugs, in the process outing himself as a firebender, which is not a good thing. Then he straight up just makes it worse by announcing his identity.
My name is Zuko, son of Ursa and Fire Lord Ozai, Prince of the Fire Nation, and heir to the throne.
Bro, please stop talking. They might have accepted you, but no, you had to announce your entire bloodline. Well, naturally, despite saving them, knowing whose son he is gets Zuko run out of town. The real meat of this episode, though, is just going back into the past to look at Zuko's relationship with his mother, who was actually nurturing and not a face-burning sociopath. Unfortunately, one day his mother disappeared, with the implication and the comics confirming that Ursa killed Zuko's grandfather after the old prick ordered Zuko's death to punish Ozai for having the audacity to suggest that he should be named heir after Iroh lost his son, robbing Zuko of his mother and leaving him to be raised solely by his dad, who hates him. Zuko, though, after this, is in his redemption arc era. He's experiencing all the things, everyone loves it. The internet puts Zuko on a pedestal for all the reasons. Yeah, I think people tend to use him too much as an example of redemption arcs in media. Every villain that gets redeemed is inevitably compared to Zuko, even when the comparison just often doesn't fully work. And Zuko is never a full-blown villain. An antagonist, yes. Did he do horrible things? Of course. But when you boil down Zuko to who he is, you realize that he's never been full evil. The issue Zuko has is one of maturity, of learning to think about what he actually wants versus doing just what he's told. Zuko's arc is less about becoming good or regaining his honor, and more about realizing that his family and country have none, that they have dishonored him and the world through their actions, and no amount of his father's approval will make him happy. Zuko is starting to learn that the Fire Nation needs to be stopped, and Zuko needs to choose for himself what he wants to do, not what he was raised to believe. This is why his experience in the Earth Kingdom as a refugee is such a huge thing and builds to his eventual turn into empathy. But in other words, he spends the entire series trying to get on Katara's level.
Zuko, I can help.
But he's not there yet, so Zuko's sabbatical abroad sends him crashing back into Azula's path. She shoots Iroh to distract everyone and dip from a fight that she was definitely gonna lose. Katara offers to heal Iroh, only to get firmly rejected by the raw nerve. But it reunites the best duo, with Zuko, after 3-ish years, finally starting to listen to Iroh's advice. And if you're a hardcore shipper, you'll also remember this episode as that one time Katara defended Zuko's ponytail.
What's wrong with ponytails, ponytail?
Each your own, but this is the last time Zutara will interact till the finale. So to summarize, Zuko and Iroh go to Ba Sing Se. Uncle Ai kills out his job so well that somebody gives him a fancy restaurant in the nicest part of town. But before that, Zuko runs into Jet, who then runs into the police, leaving Zuko to go on a date with an Earth Kingdom girl named Jin. And weirdly, this is adorable. My biggest shipping hot take, Zuko has more chemistry with Jin and Song than he ever does with Mai, who, mind you, broke up with him in the comics. And as of 2024, they still haven't gotten back together, which... Sorry. Hope y'all get your shit back in the movie, but it will never not be funny to me just how dirty the comics did this couple and how they just refuse to let y'all be happy. But Zuko is settling into his new life in Ba Sing Se. He is improving himself. He is learning to, well, not adapt to what he's in, but to tolerate it. But then he finds out the Avatar is also here, and then he tries to go and throw all of that away, interrogating cops, breaking into a secret underground facility, all to steal an elephant-sized flying animal that he can't house, can't feed, or even remotely control. This is all brought up by Iroh, who after 3 years of playing passenger to Zuko driving his life into a ditch, then complaining about it, finally puts his foot down and calls Zuko on his inability to think things through, letting Ozai control his life even when he's not in it, asking Zuko to finally look inward and ask himself what does he actually want. And to the shock of nobody but himself, Zuko chooses good, only for said healthy decision to put him in a 3-day coma because he's dramatic like that. He has visions, but awakens an optimist, actually happy to be alive, proud of his uncle, and of course this is when it all goes to shit.
It's tea time.
Katara spots the supposed bad guys in the tea shop, tries to tell the government about it, except this time the government has been infiltrated by Azula and her lackeys, resulting in Katara getting imprisoned, and Zuko gets thrown in, well, soon afterwards. As he was so high on life, Zuko thought that he could take his sister and the police. He couldn't. But here we get the scene. The moment that made this ship a household name and broke the hearts of 1 million shippers, and sparked 1 million more to actually want the damn thing. As just for the briefest of moments, for a hot second, Zutara looked like it might actually have a chance. So let's talk about it. So Zuko and Katara are trapped in a cave together. Naturally, they can't escape. They also won't try and kill each other since the Avatar isn't in the room, but he's there in spirit as Katara is grilling Zuko over this being a supposed trick to get Aang. That to her, this is all part of some elaborate plan to capture the Avatar, which is honestly fair. Katara hasn't seen Zuko in months. Last time she saw him, he chucked fire at her face for trying to help, with every incident before that involving him trying to capture her best friend and future baby daddy. Zuko has had a huge transformative journey, but Katara hasn't seen any of it, so her assuming the worst about him is pretty fair all things considered. With Zuko just taking most of it as he knows she hasn't told a single lie about how old him would have acted. That was the man who ran into a blizzard and swam through Arctic waters to get a 12-year-old. Insane plans like getting captured by your sister wouldn't be that far out of the question. But then, Katara goes too far by assuming that him being evil is hereditary.
Spreading war and violence and hatred is in your blood.
This is the one thing to get under Zuko's skin, as, yeah, he just decided to be a better person. He's trying to be better than what his father said he was and break the cycle. So being reduced to just Ozai's son would be triggering. Not to mention what I think is another underlying thing for Zuko. How he believes himself to be more than just Ozai's son. He is also his mother's. When Zuko announces his family tree to the village, he starts by calling himself the son of Ursa, then Ozai. Zuko, for as much as he's been defined by his obsession with winning back his honor and his father's approval, he has never stopped loving his mother. Never stopped seeing her as this loving figure that was ripped away from him when he was too young. Ozai may be evil incarnate, but Ursa's blood is just as much in his veins as Ozai's, so he treasures that connection. He treasures the fact that maybe not all of him is evil, though the whole evil good bloodline is given a little bit of credence by the fact that he's also descended from Roku, so Katara may not have been that far off, but the idea that he is solely defined by Ozai is the thing that really gets under his skin, so he tells Katara that she doesn't know what she's talking about, triggering her whole speech about how the Fire Nation has personally ruined her life. She does know what she's talking about. The problem is that they're having two different conversations. She's going on about the Fire Nation, he's talking about who he is. Katara, though, does bring up how the Fire Nation took her mom away from her, which prompts Zuko to say the magic words to Katara's heart.
That's something we have in common.
He's got serious mommy issues.
Like, we cut away from this, we don't know what they said, if they said anything at all, but by the time we get back, all the hostility is just gone. Katara is apologizing to him for getting heated. The 180 is just crazy here, as that's really all Zuko needed to say. I also lost my mom because of the Fire Nation, and she was just, okay, let's talk. But yeah, basically right here, we get an early preview to what's basically the culmination of both of their arcs. Katara is talking about how everything the Fire Nation has took from her, that she, on a certain level, has associated every bad thing the Fire Nation has done with Zuko. His is the face that she sees when she imagines that the Fire Nation is doing bad things. That he, as this recurring antagonist, became less than a person and more a representation of all the bad that was done to her, showing how even the most caring member of the team has issues that she really needs to work through. And this also ties into the greater theme of the show of recognizing humanity of all people, mostly. There's an obviously right and wrong side to this conflict, but the fact that both are people is something that Avatar really likes to hammer home. So for even Katara to harbor this intense hatred, it just goes to show how even the best of us have struggles to overcome and process. Meanwhile, Zuko is finally realizing that he doesn't have to be this Avatar hunter, and it was at this point that the fandom was losing their goddamn minds. It had been a pretty much just given that Zuko was gonna join the team at some point, that he would be the one to teach Aang how to firebend, that he would join Team Avatar to stop his father. All the buildup of Zuko learning to let go of his anger and to think for himself, it all seemed to be building to this moment, where not only does he choose to get better, but the heroes recognize it as well, opening the door for him to join, which builds to the single craziest move this series could have pulled, where Katara offers to remove Zuko's scar. Yeah, his signature look. The thing that has defined him for his entire life the last 2 years, and the constant reminder of his father and his own perceived dishonor. Katara offered to remove it, no questions asked. Despite all the nastiness Zuko has thrown her way at Aang, seeing him regret his actions and want to be better is enough for her to volunteer her magic spirit water on who she just thought not 5 minutes ago was her greatest enemy. Shippers were losing their fucking minds over this. This was basically the dream scenario. Zuko and Katara were forced together by circumstance. They seemed to hate each other, but then they talked about the moms, and suddenly Katara is ready to just do this massive favor to him. Zuko was about to have his figurative baptism into the light. His physical scars were being removed, his emotional ones were being healed. Katara was the one who was doing it, with whatever happening afterwards just not mattering. As this act of kindness by Katara, even if he didn't fall in love with her, you knew he would be in her debt for the rest of his life. This is the true love moment that so many people wanted to see, and it was coming, all the pieces were there, and if the show had gone with it, yeah, the story would have almost had to have them hook up, because this is just too insane not to pay off later in some way. But it didn't.
Stop it! You're spoiling it! You're spoiling everything!
Yeah, they got interrupted and things only got worse from here. Aang and Katara leave, though they give one last glance at each other. Iroh got the Avatar to help him, with his uncle finally wanting to sit his nephew down and tell him they're gonna be full good guys. Only for Azula and the Earth BI to show up and force Zuko to make a choice. To decide between siding with the Avatar and betraying his father and country, or siding with Azula, conquering the Earth Kingdom together and getting everything he ever thought he wanted. Which after all of Zuko's growth, all the lessons he's learned, all the kindness these people, his uncle and Katara have shown him, Zuko ends up picking wrong. Yup, Zuko backslides. And after that betrayal, everything just goes wrong for the good guys. Aang gets shot, Katara only escapes because Iroh bought her time, with her needing to use the magic water to heal Aang. This was Avatar's Empire Strikes Back, and nothing was ever going to be the same again. And after this, I knew Zutara was never going to happen. So I've had a lot of things that could be construed as praise or support for Zutara. While I do get all the reasons that this ship could be something great, the incredible amount of angles you could take Zuko and Katara's relationship, like the concepts are fire. That, however, is the key. The concepts. In the actual show, while edging territory that could be easily told to be romantic, Avatar never properly leans into the idea for Zutara. Like, we have Katang being the slow build that I personally couldn't stand. The times when Zutara actually interacted, while easily some of their best scenes for their respective seasons, I never got the vibe that the show is actually gonna pull the trigger and make them a couple later on. Their scenes were too few, the romantic tension people like to imagine, it's not actually there, though the tropes would make you think, okay, this could easily be that. And the closest we get is the cave scene, but before that they basically don't talk for the entire season. But brief moment, we do think, okay, something might happen, but then it doesn't, and Zuko commits a top 10 anime betrayals for a team he wasn't even on. So I think this is the idea that cemented the idea of Zutara, the spice, the intrigue, the oh my god, it could actually happen. But for me, this is the moment where the ship kinda died. I still like the idea, but actually seeing it happen in the show, no. it's gone, not happening. I knew Zuko was gonna join the good guys, but I also figured that after this level of personal betrayal, the fallout of Aang nearly dying, the fall of the Earth Kingdom, all of it creates a situation where, while still technically possible, Last Airbender would have had to jump through an insane number of emotional hoops to get Katara to forgive Zuko, then have them date. This is why Zutara fans got flack back in the day for wanting it to still happen. And on top of fighting Katang fans, kind of rightfully so, you pretty much have to justify a lot of emotional growth that the show probably would never have the time for. Forgiving Zuko's previous behavior is one thing, but season 2's finale pretty much put Zuko in a lucky if you end up just being friends camp. I still like the idea of Zutara, but there is a point where supporting a ship does hit just full fanon. It's not gonna happen, but while fun and mostly should be harmless, you just kind of have to take the L after a point. In the cave, Zutara's 9/11, never forget. Yeah, this kind of killed it. And if that betrayal didn't do it fully, then in the premiere of season 3, they made it really clear where they were going.
Stop worrying.
There. He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is. I'm not.
He isn't?
Well, he will be soon. He's very ill. I'm getting better.
No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
Yep, Zuko and Mei hooked up between seasons. Meanwhile, Katang finally started having romantic tension that didn't feel like cringe. Show pretty much looked us dead in the eye and said, "This is what we're doing, get over it." Fair. Various people who have worked on the show say in earlier drafts of season 2, Zuko was going to join the team, but woulda couldas don't really mean anything in my book unless I wrote it myself. I will say though, I've always just thought it was a little weird that Zuko and Mei just start this season together. They'll get their own video, but to summarize here, this ship, while not out of nowhere, we have a whole 2 instances to indicate that Mei has a thing for Zuko, or did in the past. However, for right here, after what happened, it feels a wee bit out of place. Aang, he apparently was only in a coma for a few weeks, so that's our timeline for when this had to happen. Zuko has never been indicated to have any feelings towards Mei, or at least that we see, and they also don't ever interact in the second season. But the bigger character conflict for me is that Zuko, fresh off of betraying his uncle, feels like and has always been shown to be the type of person to dwell on his mistakes. So I don't really see a scenario where he's not an angsty mess over what he did. Therefore, he wouldn't be in like really the headspace to start dating his little sister's best friend. I think these two are decent as a couple, and weirdly, Mei gets way more out of this, is way more interesting because of this relationship than Zuko ever is. But this relationship has always felt like it was just done to get people to stop shipping Zutara and to give Zuko somebody to talk to that isn't his immediate family when he's on the bad guy's side. As he really needs it, as he's home for like a day, and immediately starts panicking at the idea that the Avatar might be alive because of Katara. So he does a reasonable thing. No, he doesn't tell his father that Aang might be alive and that his sister's a liar. No. He hires an assassin, as you do. This followed up by him realizing that he's got everything he's ever wanted and he's still not happy. He keeps being miserable, more miserable. One really cool moment at the beach, finds out about his family tree, and then realizes, oh shit, I've made a terrible mistake. So Zuko finally turns against his father and tries to join Team Avatar after their invasion plan failed. Only for the team to react exactly how you think they will.
You can't possibly think that any of us would trust you, can you? I mean, how stupid do you think we are?
Oh yeah, Katara hates his ass. Everyone else in the room has their misgivings about why they shouldn't let Zuko on the team, but Katara is arguing that they shouldn't be letting him breathe. So Katara knows all too well how Zuko can teeter-totter between trying to be good and stabbing you in the back, which is fair. Yet for all this hatred, all this newfound rage and resentment, it does highlight again why people love Zutara so much. I can see the argument that Zuko has more chemistry with Sokka because everyone does. But Zuko and Katara's relationship is easily the most interesting one at this point in the story, even if you don't ship them. Katara is 100% right to be suspicious and feel resentment towards Zuko. And Katara, the caregiver, is just so aggro around Zuko, it's kind of a breath of fresh air versus her usual I'm trapped being the heart or wishing I was fun shtick. With Zuko knowing all too well that he screwed her over personally and struggling to justify his own existence and how him being here, it just isn't a trap. We get to see Katara talk about what she thought Zuko was doing during the cave, how she thought he seemed confused, how he lost his mother, how she felt genuinely bad for him, but even if she doesn't fully know what he said was a lie, when it came down to the wire, he chose evil and Aang nearly died for it. So keeping Zuko at arm's length is a very natural response. Zuko does eventually convince the gang to let him stay. They don't trust him, but he nearly died to save them from the bounty hunter he sent, so that it kinda has to count for something. With Katara getting her coldest moment, as she threatens to kill Zuko if he ever even seems to consider consider betraying them again. Zuko may be on the team, but she still doesn't trust him and spends the rest of the season roasting him for it. Being the only one to laugh at him when he loses his firebending, she spends most of the time Zuko is handing out field trips mocking him, and honestly, I'm living for it. Petty Katara is so much fun, mainly because we see so little of her. But then it comes time for their own little detour. Zuko and Sokka broke her dad out of prison, meaning that Zuko helped restore the family that his keeps nearly tearing apart. But even then, it's still not enough.
You can get off me now.
Dude tried to save her life, and she's still not giving him credit. She pays it back later, but on her good side, he is not. And Zuko is at a point where he's allowed to make jokes about how shitty he used to be. So now Katara, far from just being the one who gets to laugh at him with the rest of the group, Katara is now the lone hater, and she is fuming over his newfound acceptance. So now she feels crazy watching him just be accepted by everyone when she was the first one to ever trust him, and he stabbed her in the back. So naturally, this means it's time for a field trip. But this time for revenge. Like essentially, Zuko realizes the root of Katara's beef with him is the loss of her mother. So Zuko decides he wants to show her he cares and can be trusted, deciding he wants to help Katara gain closure by bringing her to her mother's killer. Aang tells him maybe, let's not kill anyone. He's ignored. Katara has this notorious line.
Then you didn't love her the way I did.
Which is very harsh, very mean, but also like, she's not wrong.
I'm not sure I can remember what my mother looked like. And now, when I try to remember my mom, Katara's is the only face I can picture.
Terrible thing to say, but Sokka is not haunted by her mother's death like Katara is. When they're in the time swamp, Katara sees her mom while Sokka just sees his moon ex. All of her kids have been grieving for her, but clearly Kaya's death has hit Katara the hardest as she was forced into her mother's role. Hence why she has such a visceral reaction at the idea of finally confronting the man that took her. I do think it's a little bit fucked up that Mr. I'm a better person now Zuko, Mr. giving up on your obsession Zuko, is dangling the possibility of revenge and using another person as an outlet for your own internal struggles to Katara. Like, he would be the one to suggest this, but also feels like maybe he wouldn't do it. Luckily though, it doesn't really matter because upon finding the guy, Katara can't bring herself to kill him. So she goes home, where she proceeds to tell Aang to shut the fuck up about the idea that she forgave her mother's murderer. She didn't. She's moving on with her life, but she is ready to forgive Zuko, giving him a hug that would cover 1,000,000 message boards. While also reminding us that yeah, it wasn't happening. We could talk up all the little moments that happen after this. Katara consoling Zuko before he faces his uncle, the two of them facing Azula together and saving each other's lives, Zuko finally taking the lightning bolt he should have taken in season 2's finale, but the ship, it's dead, it's sunk, it's gone. You can see why people are so attracted to it. They just have one of the most interesting dynamics on the show, and the idea of what could be done with them is so captivating people are just drawn to it. Zutara felt like it was gonna happen for a hot second, but everything else was just mostly wish fulfillment. And honestly, that's fine. We could talk all we want about how it wasn't going to happen, how everything about this was so aggressive, how no side of the shipping debates were chilled because the people who were having them were children. The appeal of Zutara to me is for people to find their own ways to interpret or explain away this couple. To take the most interesting character in the series and the girl with the worst job but the most romantic potential and just slap them together and just see and imagine what you want. Zutara as a concept I like, even if I never loved it, nor really thought, okay, this is gonna happen. But it's in an area of fandom where everyone's exact take is different, which is why I think it works. But to answer the question of who Katara should have ended up with, well, I guess I have to answer that, even though I do think that the answer is obvious. Let me explain. I'm just fucking with you. Yeah, Zuko takes us. Sorry, Katang shippers. How the show hooks them up rubs me the wrong way. If I'm having to pick out of the viable options, yeah, I think we have to go Zuko by default. The relationship is smutty and full of potential cliches, but it's a fun read, so I can't help it. It's the difference between cringe coma and a fanfiction I basically have to write myself. I will take my own bullshit over boredom any day of the week. Again, romance is Avatar's Achilles heel. They have never been good at this. The only couples that they can make work are the ones that they lucked into. And you can count all of them on one hand. with pretty much all of them including Sokka. Katara honestly doesn't have many great romantic options. Haru is an extra after his first appearance, Jet's a corpse, she doesn't meet a single Water Tribe boy her age to round out this harem. So if you're gonna force me to pick a partner, like she can't be single, then I guess I have to pick Zutara based purely on the tags. Some Zutara fans are overzealous, every ship has them. Katang, don't laugh, y'all can be just as bad too. But of the things that get popular in fan spaces, I can see why Zutara, with all of its spice potential, would be the one people would gravitate towards. Aang and Toph are children, Sokka is goofy and doing his own thing, so all that puberty energy of its audience has to be hyper-focused into one thing, and of course it was gonna be Zutara. And after going back through the series, yeah, I can see why. Also, I swear, if Aang and Katara's kids weren't such huge characters in Korra, I will put money on the Netflix adaptation making Zutara canon. But that's the last word from me. Tell me what other Avatar ships you want me to talk about. Like, share, and subscribe to be kept up to date on all my nonsense. Peace out, love you all, have a good one.